want me to plug you in?
Later. Just changes to. Yeah. That's good.
Did you try all of them?
I quite frankly,
I know.
happy to.
I know.
All right, okay, everybody, let's, you do me a favor, turn your microphones on.
All right, well, folks, we're going to get underway. First of all, thank you everybody for being out here. I know the weather is starting to turn a little bit inclement outside, so thank you. It looks like we've got a nice turnout this evening. First of all, we're going to hold our special board meeting tonight to deal with three items. The first is to announce the results of the air conditioning unit covenant referendum. The second item will be to consider the draft Tetra property purchase referendum question and fact sheet and related draft letter of intent to purchase the property. And lastly, to receive an update from Reston Association's Land Use Council on Reston Master Plan Phase 2 Comprehensive Plan Amendments. So I move to adopt the special meeting agenda for the purposes just stated. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Alan?
All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right. Well, the first thing I'll do then this evening, as it's on the agenda, is to announce the results of the air conditioning unit referendum. With almost 80% of eligible voters casting a ballot, the referendum to repeal Reston Deed Section 6.2 B15 on air conditioning units, the air conditioning covenant or covenant, failed to achieve the required 2/3 vote to remove the covenant. The covenant will remain in effect, and the Reston Lake Ann Air Conditioning Corporation RELAC will continue to provide service to the affected residents on Lake Ann. The results of the referendum will be posted on the association's website by tomorrow. Item D, moving on to member comments, and I just had the sign-up sheet here. All right. First person is Andy Siegel. Good evening, sir. You could state your name and your address.
Andy Siegel, 2715 Soapstone Drive, Reston, Virginia, South Lakes District. In keeping with the practices and customs of the Reston Association Board, the following. Whereas the Board of Directors has invited association members to speak for 3 minutes at the member comments portion of board meetings, and whereas I have gathered the necessary signatures and filled out the requisite forms, and whereas the RA Elections Committee has now certified my petition of candidacy, and whereas I am ready to actively campaign with the goal of rejoining the board of the community that I so love and enjoy, and whereas I am humbled to be endorsed for the position by our community's founder, Robert E. Simon, and whereas I am happy to cede back 2 of my 3 minutes to what looks like a very busy and important board agenda, now, therefore, be it resolved that in my own voice and in front of my fellow Restonians, I hereby declare my candidacy for the Reston Association South Lakes District Board position, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well done. All right. Next for member comments is John Hunter.
Thank you. My name is John Hunter. I live at 1660 Chimney House Road in Reston, Virginia. I'm representing Washington Plaza Cluster. I wanted to state that, first off, I wanted to thank you folks for taking up the issue of the referendum. Looks like we'll be taking this up again very soon, because I'm not giving up on this. I did send an email to Kate, who in turn forwarded that to the board. I asked if the results could be, besides just being a yes or no, if we could find out the clusters or the streets, how the votes went along those areas. I believe that could be some useful information, not only to RA, I believe it could also be helpful to RELAC, who has stated in the past throughout this whole issue that Mark has stated that he didn't know there were issues. Nobody's told him there were issues. People didn't call in issues. This would be a perfect chance for him to know where the issues are. And yet, for some reason, he stated he did not want this information and he would prefer not to have it released. I think I asked that you release this. I'd never heard back. Is that the plan to be released that way, or is it just going to be yes or no?
It's entirely up to the board.
We will be releasing the statistics tomorrow that show the number of votes, their turnout, as well as the number of votes that were for, as well as the number of votes that were against.
Okay, so I guess I must be mistaken, because the results of the referendum, I thought that was going to be part of the issue, was we were going to find out how people voted, at least at the very minimum, yes or no. But now we find out that that's going to be tomorrow, which I probably would have not come. However, regardless, so I guess, do you not have the answer yet, or?
I can give you the statistics if you're interested.
I am interested.
The valid ballots online were 172. The valid ballots via paper were 100 for a total number of ballots of 272. Not in favor of the revocation were 154, which is a little over 56%. Yes in favor of the revocation were 118, which was a little over 43%.
Thank you. Will we be getting the information on the neighborhoods or the streets?
That's a question for the board. That's not something that we requested of the, I apologize.
No, please.
That we requested of our counting agent. So that's a decision that the board would have to make on that.
Okay.
You sent a letter to the board, an email?
I sent it to Kate. Kate forwarded it.
And I
Forwarded it to the leadership, the board
Oh,
leadership.
because I didn't get one.
I understand. It was forwarded to the board leadership for discussion. It was forwarded to Mr. Sanyo, Ellen Graves, myself. So we'll discuss that.
Do we have a ETA on that?
Again, we'll discuss it as a board.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right. Is there anybody else who has not signed up but would like to make a comment?
I'd like to make a comment.
Please, if you could come up, state your name and your address.
I'm Robert Gerstein from 1636 Wainwright Drive, Colson Cluster. I'm sorry that Mr. Hunter just left. I think he would have liked to hear the comment, and that is that I addressed this board, I think, 2 times during the run-up to the referendum. I pointed out that I thought the referendum itself did, in fact, have to be approved by a 2/3 majority because that was the language of the covenant itself. Nonetheless, the board chose to hold the referendum and have the rules just require a 1/3 majority of all those that came.
No. So it requires a 2/3 majority.
A 2/3 majority of all those who voted.
Of the votes, yes.
Very good. Then I stand corrected, and I'm happy to hear that. But I also don't like the concept of revisiting this and having it revisited on a cluster-by-cluster basis, as Mr. Hunter just suggested would happen. The folks were very, very diligent about getting the referendum done. They were very, and quite frankly, I cannot applaud you more for the board for doing it in such a reasonable and fast manner. But what seemed to be implied, what Mr. Hunter seemed to be implying, and maybe I inferred this, was that they were going to, again, canvass each of the clusters and try to have yet another referendum. And I do hope that you folks consider that this is really an an intrusion on all of us. The people have voted. The people have stated this. They stated it in 2008. They've stated it again. Let's get this over with once and for all.
Thank
That's
you.
my comment for you.
Appreciate that.
But I really do appreciate just exactly how well you've done this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else? Please, Kate.
A recommendation
Yeah.
is that I do think you need to consider the request that was made, whether you do that at this meeting or maybe your February 26th meeting, not at this meeting, not at the special meeting, but probably at the February 26th meeting, I recommend that that be something that you do add to the agenda, and I will make sure I forward the entire request and all the information received from both parties in it, unless this board hears otherwise. I just wanted to pause
I was going to
and
bring it
ask
up
that.
during our BPC later this evening as a new business
Or to add. Okay.
to work on doing this and come to a time where we could have a discussion and whenever that takes place.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was the intent.
Okay.
Thank you. All righty. Moving on to item F. As per section 5.3K of Reston Association's bylaws and further delineated in Board and Association Operations Resolution 1, the Board of Directors may convene an executive session to consider personnel matters, consult with legal counsel, discuss and consider contracts, potential probable or pending litigation, and matters involving violations of Reston documents or rules and regulations adopted by the Board of Directors, or discuss and consider the personal liability of members. This evening, the board will be going into executive session to discuss contractual matters with legal counsel related to the draft letter of intent, which includes negotiation and purchasing terms for the Tetra property. So I move to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual matters with legal counsel related to the draft letter of intent, which includes negotiation and purchasing terms for the Tetra property. Do I hear a second?
That was E, not F.
Thank you.
Second.
Eve seconds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, thank you. We're meeting in the
In the covenants conference.
covenants room. All right.
All right, thank you.
All right. I need to move. Yes, I move to come out of executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll have a healthy crew here. All right, continuing with the item that we went into the executive session for, let me give you a little background.
Can you turn up your sound? We can't hear you.
Okay.
How's that?
Better.
All right. Thank you. All right. As directed during our board meeting on January 22nd, 2015, staff is prepared this evening to present the draft referendum question, fact sheet, and letter of intent for board's consideration. Pending additional changes this evening, the draft referendum question and fact sheet will be made available on our website and through the local media for member comment during 2 hearings scheduled to take place on February 26th and March 26th. During executive session, the board discussed negotiation price and purchasing terms for the Tetra property. The board has determined that the purchase price for the property based on an appraisal performed for Reston Association should be $2.65 million. The board also discussed authorizing the CEO in coordination with legal counsel to finalize the letter of intent for Tetra property based on the contractual terms discussed during the executive session. So I'm going to read a motion. I move to authorize the CEO, in coordination with legal counsel, to finalize the letter of intent for the Tetra property based on the contractual terms discussed during executive session, which includes setting the purchase price at $2.65 million, which is based on an appraisal performed by and for the association, Purchase of the property will be contingent upon successful negotiation of a final contract, approval by the membership, and by referendum and financing. Do I hear a second?
A second.
All right, I'll go around the table for any comments or questions. Jeff?
I think we're headed down the right path. I think there's some more information we'll need to get out, and I'm hoping we get a lot of active interest from the community with regard to helping us make the referendum question better and even help us ensure we get the facts right, because it's obviously a big commitment on the part of the association. So their active involvement is going to be very important to ensuring that we get it right.
Okay. Before I might do a point of order on myself, would we like to have presentations from staff on this before I go to questions? Would that be a better way to go?
No, I think you're just voting on what
okay,
you mentioned, and we'll be talking about the referendum question and the fact sheet in just a moment.
Okay, very good. Just wanted to make sure. Lucinda?
Just to clarify, this is only for the letter of intent, correct? Okay. I thought that we were going to be able to review the final letter of intent and vote on it at the board meeting at the end of this month. I didn't realize that we were actually going to finalize it tonight without having a chance to look at it.
We're not finalizing it tonight.
But when you read the proposal, it said that we were going to authorize Kate to finalize it. That's not...
Yes, with input from...
Oh, for board approval?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Richard?
I'll echo what Jeff said. I think that for this to be successful, we're going to have to make a compelling argument to the membership. The fact sheets, the question, everything's going to have to be perfect. And I look forward to everyone working to get to that point.
Mr. Chadwick, anything? Kate, I'll come back to you. Oh?
I think it's extremely important that we're totally transparent with this entire process. And I would hope that if there are questions and the answers are not on the fact sheet, that there will be another avenue to get additional answers.
Okay.
I echo those comments as well. I think it's really important to hear from the community about this property and the use of the property and advisability. So far, what I've heard, I'm encouraged. I think it's the right thing to do, and so I support going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the easy part. You know, the more difficult part is making sure that we get a good sense of what the community wants, so that, you know, so that we can move forward or not, depending on what the community wants.
Okay. Danielle,
No, I'm pretty much in agreement with what my fellow board members have said. Very excited about the prospect of this, but I want to make sure that the members have all the information they can. And the more information, the more questions we get from the members, the better decision we can all come to.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to give the community a great opportunity to comment on all of this. But I think, at least at this point in time, it looks like a wonderful opportunity to take control of a piece of property that I think would be very important to Reston Association and to the community. Kate, you want to add anything at this point on that?
Now we just look forward to talking more about the referendum question, fact sheet, and some more details, as have been indicated by the board.
All right. Very good. Then I will ask the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anybody opposed? Is anybody abstaining? Thank you, folks. All right. Next item is the draft Tetra property purchase referendum question, fact sheet, and related draft letter of intent to purchase the property.
So I think you all have already hit the letter of intent portion of it. So now you're looking at, we're going to be talking about the fact sheet, and we're going to be talking about the referendum question. So why don't we start with the referendum question first? I'm going to put that, Sabrina's going to put that up on the screen so that everybody can see that. That's probably the easier part of the two that we've got. I'm going to go ahead and send around to the board a hard copy question of the proposed referendum ballot. And we're just in the beginning stages of putting the graphics on all of these materials. So this is just kind of a first taste of something of the way it will look for the board's purposes. All of these materials after this evening as well will be made available through the association's website for the benefit of our members. So what we have on the referendum question is this. Should the Reston Association, acting through the Board of Directors, be authorized to purchase the Tetra property, inclusive of land and improvements, located at 11450 Baron Cameron Avenue, Reston, Virginia, 20190, in the North Point District, as an addition to common area pursuant to Article 4, Section 410 of the Reston Deed, and 2, borrow up to, and we can fill in that blank after our discussion this evening, up to $2.65 million on behalf of the association to make the purchase and repurpose the property for future community and recreation use. Yes, no, abstain are left there. So that is the proposed question that we have developed internally for the board's consideration this evening. And again, this would just still be, even any changes you may have will still be in draft, as we have 2 public hearings scheduled for later this month, February the 26th, and then again, March the 26th, before you finalize the question and the fact sheet, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, before it goes out in the referendum package.
Okay.
Similar to the process we had with the air conditioning unit. Question, fact sheet, lots of discussion before we finalize it.
Questions, anybody? Okay. Fact sheet?
So no
No questions?
questions or suggested anything we're missing?
Kate,
Question?
Kate, I would just like to suggest that somehow in 2, we make note that this property will be incorporated into the Reston Association common area.
Okay.
So perhaps, incorporate it into the Reston Association common area and repurpose the property for future community and recreation use or something along those lines.
Okay.
Is
Richard,
that redundant with number 1?
does it say that at the 1, 2, 3, 4th line of number 1?
I'm sorry, I missed that, yes. Yep.
But I like how you say, no, you've got that, okay.
I missed that, thank you.
So do you still want us to add
Oh,
something?
I mean, I think you've covered it. I mean,
Okay.
the point is that this will be incorporated into our
Common area.
Yeah.
Lucinda, anything?
Nope, no.
Jeff? Danielle?
Will this be, I like how it says, will we give people the opportunity to vote electronically?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
E?
Nope.
Mike?
No, I'm good.
Helen?
Good.
I'm good. All right.
Okay. The separate piece, the next piece that we have is the referendum fact sheet. I do not have something, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Do we need to say anything here about the use will be dependent on member input? Do we want to go there?
This is about,
This is just giving us the permission. Okay.
it's a separate thing.
Yeah, the member input's going to come from all of the advertising over the next many months and all of the public hearings. You're going to have a multitude of different public events to make yourself
Okay.
available for comments, ideas.
I'm sorry, Kate.
No worries. Good question, because it's a great segue into the next piece of it. And what we did is make sure that we had copies for the board, and as many people, we weren't sure how many were coming this evening to the meeting, but I will hand to Sabrina in a minute copies for the audience. This is the text that goes along with the referendum question. It's called a fact sheet. It's separate from the ballot itself. And it's not formatted pretty yet. We didn't want to, we are working on it so it matches all of the information that goes out. I did not put it on a slide format, so I do apologize for that, as we were literally working on all of this up until even 20 minutes ago as we're finishing it up. So the extra pieces are here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through section by section for the board. And again, this is open not only for the board's comment for recommended adjustments and things that are missing or should be included, but also will be subject to the public hearings that are coming up if we're missing any information. So the first thing that we do is describe the property. And we say that the Tetra property at 11450 Barron Cameron Avenue, Reston, Virginia, is a strategically located 3.467 acre parcel situated on the north shore of Lake Newport, bound to the west by Reston Association's RA Lake Newport Tennis Complex, and to the east by common area that is part of RA's Browns Chapel Park. The property includes a 3,128 square foot, one-story frame construction building erected in 1982 by the Reston Land Corporation to serve as the Reston Visitor Center. The property was used for that purpose until 2003, when the property was purchased by Lake Newport LLC, a subsidiary of Tetra Partners, a local commercial real estate development and management firm, which has occupied the space since that time. We propose inserting a photograph someplace along with this description of the property, or several different photographs. The property can be accessed from both Barron Cameron Avenue and North Village Road. RA has an easement of use over the property. I already see an edit instead of 4 over, but over the property to Lake Newport tennis courts, Browns Chapel Park, parking, and the pathway. The main parking lot serves as the emergency spillway for Lake Newport. The current Fairfax County land use designation in the master plan for the property is convenience center. This designation also allows the property to be used as office space with the option to expand the space into a 2-story building, an approximately 6,930 square foot restaurant, having a footprint that it could extend 50 feet into Lake Newport. The property is located between, is again using the word strategically located between two major recreational amenities owned by RA, and ownership of the property would create a contiguous band of common area property or parkland on the north side of Barron Cameron Avenue, just east of Reston Parkway to Reston's eastern boundary in the Longwood Grove neighborhood. This includes the Fairfax County Park Authority property at Barron Cameron Park. I'm going to pause, see if anybody's picked up anything from the board that you see.
I'll give them a second. Danielle, anything?
No.
Eve?
Nope.
Mike?
No, I think you picked up the air front.
Ellen,
Check
anything?
out later.
Richard?
I'm good.
All right, listen, okay. Jeff? Okay.
Again, this is not final. You know, if somebody sees something later, we can always pick it up as we go through this process. Potential uses of the property. If acquired, the RA Board, in accordance with its policies, will solicit member input through the association's Parks, Recreation Advisory Committee to determine the best community and recreation uses for the property. For the purposes of this referendum, RA staff develop a conservative rental and programming plan to project potential revenues from the uses for the use of the property, which could include holiday and break camps serving Reston's youth, after-school programming, corporate and community rentals for business meetings, reception, and other similar events, extended child care to complement RA's existing camps programs, programming for all age ranges, including but not limited to art and fitness, and instructional and educational programming. I'm going to pause. Acquisition costs and financials. I'm going to get through part of this, and then I'm going to pause to relinquish the floor to David Harris to talk a little bit more about the financials that we would include. Acquisition costs and financials. The agreed-upon purchase price for the property, based on an appraisal performed for RA, has been established as $2.65 million. To finance the purchase of the property, the association would obtain a financial loan for the purchase, not purpose price, but purchase price, and will apply $650,000 from blank to offset expenses that will be incurred to repurpose and maintain the property. I'm going to pause because at this point, this is where we would say on the second sheet, it says that RA documents require a 5-year statement of projected operating costs to be included in the referendum materials. And this is where this information will be important. And you in the audience should be able to see it, not only here, but also over there.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So the first page of this electronic document are the assumptions that are the basis upon which we prepared a 5-year P&L and cash flow statement. The first line item, self-explanatory, it's the appraisal amount, which we're using as the purchase price, $2,650,000. Through discussions with potential lenders, we were able to negotiate a 0% down payment, so we can finance up to 100% of the purchase price, and potential interest rate of 3.45%, so just under 3.5%. The term of the loan, and this is important to note, it's a 20-year amortization period. However, the loan matures after 10 years, and we would have to refinance at a new interest rate. We're estimating a settlement date of July 1st of this year. The Parks and Rec staff came up with a revenue projection, a net revenue projection after program costs of $123,000. And that's a mix of facility rental for corporate meetings and possibly wedding receptions, and also the net income from RA programming. On the operating expense side, We have property taxes and an annual amount of $19,500. It's important to note that once this property is converted to RA common area, it's no longer subject to property or real estate tax. We received a quote from our insurance broker for the premium specific to this property, which would be about $1,500. We excluded from our P&L grounds maintenance costs and snow removal costs. We would not have to subcontract those out to a third party, nor would we have to hire additional resources to take care of ground maintenance and snow removal. There will be cleaning costs associated with the facility. Based on discussions with our current provider, those will be about $10,000 a year. We have an estimated repairs and maintenance costs of about $5,000. Electricity, gas, and skipping down to the bottom, security monitoring and water costs, we're assuming the same annual cost as Tetra is incurring at this time. We believe those are good estimates. They're in the facility at least 5 days a week, 8 to 6. So those are, I think those are pretty reliable estimates for utilities and security monitoring. Internet and telephone costs. We obtained some rough quotes from our current telecom management company. The facility will have trash collection, and we will have to have a dumpster on site, especially if we're having catered corporate events. Down near the bottom, we have some inflation assumptions for both income and expenses. So we're expecting a 3% increase annually for those items. We will have one-time immediate capital improvements to the facility to repurpose it for RA programming use and to convert it into a meeting facility. We obtained a quote from a third-party contractor that we could expect to spend about $70 per square foot. We felt it would be prudent to add another $10 per square foot on top of that, just to make sure we're covering any potential costs. And then we will have a little over $16,000 in loan costs at settlement. So I know those are a lot of numbers, but I just wanted to show you that we did do some due diligence to get numbers to support a 5-year P&L statement. And we actually did 5.5 years. Our governing documents require 5 years. So if you look at the first line item, facility revenue, and those numbers are net of programming costs. In 2015, we will be leasing the property back to the current tenant through the end of the year. So that $50,000 is representative rental income back from the current tenant. The operating expenses flow with the assumptions that I went through. A couple of things to point out. I said property taxes. The property is exempt from property taxes once it converts to common area. And we expect that to happen January 1st of 2016. So that's why you don't see any property tax figures after 2015. And the current tenant will pay cleaning and utility costs while they occupy the space. So that's why there's zeros in those rows. You can see that we arrive at a net operating income figure here. And we need to convert that to a cash flow number. So what's missing is the principal and interest on a loan. So we have recurring operating income, less principal and interest on the loan, and that gives us our recurring cash flow. There are a few non-recurring items to account for. I mentioned the loan costs. I'm calling those acquisition costs on this analysis. And there will be developer contributions coming in that we can use to offset and defray some of these operating expenses and the capital improvements. You'll see that the capital improvements will take place the first 6 months of 2016. And that's how we get to our annual cash flow figures. And, really what's important is the cumulative cash flow from this property. You'll see that through the first 4 years, we remain positive on a cumulative basis. And then in the fifth year, or fourth and a half year, 2019, we do go negative. And that's where assuming none of these numbers change, there will be an impact to the member assessment based upon our current number of members, including the Harrison. So in 2019, we have an impact of just under $3 per member, and in 2020, an impact of just under $4 per member on the annual assessment. And then here at the bottom, I'm just showing our mortgage balance, the principal reductions annually, and the interest expense annually. Any questions?
What I might do is open it up to the audience. Since you're looking at the materials as well, is there any question that you might have for us at this point in time? Yes, sir. Name and... Just speak loudly.
Sure. There is a purchase price that you have named is $2.65 million based on an appraisal. Will the public be given an opportunity to review the appraisal documents?
Yeah, I would assume as much. I mean, we're going to open this up for questions, member input, so I would assume that would include the materials that we used to come to this point.
So that will be put on the web? On the website?
I would assume as much, yeah.
It'll be available for members.
Yeah.
There are some rights that the Reston Association has over the property presently. Were those discounted in the price? In other words, the price for a third-party purchaser, other than the Reston Association, would take that into account. You shouldn't be paying for it twice. And I would think, therefore, that an appraisal that gave a number of 2.65 for a third-party purchaser should be lower than 2.65 for Reston.
John, do you want to?
John?
You done with comments? I can comment after you're done.
Okay. That was my initial comment. The other one, you said there'll be developer contributions.
Correct.
You said there would be developer contributions.
That's correct.
That's a somewhat mystifying phrase that I really don't understand. Maybe you can elaborate more on that.
I can, if you'd like. We are in negotiation with a developer that has committed to $650,000 for this project. And they asked that I wait just a little bit until they finalize the paperwork with us in the next couple of weeks. But I was given assurances that the $650,000 would be forthcoming in 2015.
And that's in return for?
Yet to be determined.
Yet to be determined. In return for yet to be determined. We can provide.
I'm assuming it's not a gift.
That would be a true statement.
And I'm assuming that once those arrangements are finalized, that will also be developed in the public.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Right.
Just to respond to the issue on the appraisal took into account all the easements that Reston Association has on the property. It is covenanted land also. Basically, the appraisal valued the property, which is about 3.5 acres almost, for its current office use on a small portion of that acreage, on its potential under current zoning and PRC plan for an additional use for restaurant or office. Then there was close to about an acre and a half of excess land that was extra. That was where a lot of the RA easements and other uses were, and no value was attributed to that excess land. So in effect, RA under the valuation would not be paying twice.
May I have a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
The appraisal apparently takes into account the potential use as, or part of the facility as a restaurant. And I understand, I have not read the case, and so it's hearsay for me, but I understand there was a proposal to erect a restaurant on the lake in that area that is reserved for that purpose, and that residents adjoining the lake sued to stop that proposal and were successful in so doing. Why would it be any different again? And why should that be given any value?
Again, I defer to counsel.
Now, again, we could do this all night. I think as the information comes out later, that's probably a better venue to do it after we've locked into a lay-stay contract proposal from the seller for this board to consider. So I don't want to speak about it too much, but actually I represented Save Lake Newport and an organization of people who had fought a redevelopment proposal for probably 4 years, 5 years. That redevelopment proposal was a more ambitious one for 27,000 square foot office building. That one, we were successful in preventing that from happening. Not the restaurant that has the approval and the zoning determination letters for it. In fact, the original plans for that building, the wood frame building you see now, and its architecture, the actual building plans that were approved has this additional restaurant area and a 2-story add-on. So I'm not aware of a lawsuit on the restaurant itself. Perhaps what they were alluding to was this other proposal.
I'll come to the board, but is there anybody else in the audience that has a question? We'll have many more opportunities, so I just wanted to give a start tonight. Yeah, please.
Tammy Petrine, 2503 Foxcroft Way. One quick question, why the 10-year loan and then refinancing? Why couldn't we do a...
So unlike when you buy a personal residence, typically in those situations, the bank that lends you the money to buy your house will then package a bunch of those mortgages up and sell them off and offload the risk to a third party. In commercial loans, that doesn't happen. 99% of the time, the lender retains that loan on their balance sheet. So rather than, I think 10 years is about the longest I've ever seen that a bank is willing to take that interest rate risk. Because in periods where interest rates rise, they start to lose money on those loans.
Okay, but that's inherent, a risk that RA is taking at that 10-year level.
Yeah,
that we'll
and
be taking into
it's
account.
usually between 5, 7, and 10-year balloons or maturity.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Why don't I start with the board, Danielle?
Yes. I think one of the questions I have is regarding the convenience center classification and how it impacts our appraisal. Now, we are working to remove the convenience center classification, correct? With the master plan. And if we were to have that removed, would that reduce the appraisal?
I think that's something that council could better answer.
The magic box. No, it would not, because what we're talking about is just the comprehensive plan. It already has a development plan for the zoning, which gives it certain by right uses. That already calls for the office use and the restaurant use.
So even if we remove convenience center, it still can be built out as a restaurant or a building?
That's correct.
Under the current plan, sir?
Pardon?
Under the current plan?
No, under the current adopted comprehensive plan, you could build a lot more, but you would have to come in and revise the development plan, which is a plan approved in the zoning. The comprehensive plan is the guide for the later final development plan in the zoning. So it's important to change that designation, certainly if we don't purchase this property. What we're recommending is that it be changed to limited office use in case we don't purchase it, which is pretty much what it is now, and community use. So that plan designation fits whether RA purchases the property or not, and is more limiting, much more limiting than the current comprehensive plan. But as far as the appraisal that we're working under, that's based upon the existing zoning rather than the comprehensive plan. We instructed them not to base it upon a broader array of uses in the convenience center designation.
So as it's presently written in the development plan, it could be developed to be the restaurant facility that was approved years ago. So
yes, sir.
Yes. So there's the risk of some entity having that opportunity. Anything else, Daniel?
I'm sure, but let's let.
Okay. Eve?
As I recall, that development plan included not only the restaurant, but a restaurant that goes 50 feet into the water, something
Correct.
crazy like that. I mean,
It's twice the size it is
pretty
now.
significant impact. I mean, I
6930
Right.
square foot, two-story building,
yeah.
as it's in our fact sheet.
I don't have any question. I mean, I think the 10-year note is, or the 10-year balloon is actually a really good commercial rate. I mean, I've actually been looking at these recently, and 7 was the absolute best that I was able to find. Obviously, you guys must have more clout than me, but so I mean, the financing looks really good, and I think what I hope we're able to communicate out, and what the feedback we get back on, is that to protect the property so that we don't end up with a restaurant with a big deck on it would be a great thing.
So I'm hearing from you that maybe an add so far the text would be to say something to the effect that if acquired, we would be changing
Right,
the zoning
exactly,
to
so that
limit the use.
right,
to-
because
Yes.
probably there are people who have the perception that, you know, oh wait, no, they sued and they won, but yes, that's true, but it doesn't mean that there's not a risk remaining.
So we need to add something to the fact sheet that addresses.
I think people need to understand what the current allowable construction potential is on that site.
Maybe a footprint picture?
Of what it could be or something.
And your loan, was it a 7-year, was it
Mike?
collateralized?
Yeah, concern that I've had is, what is RA going to do with the property once it acquires it? And I think being very clear at the outset that the purpose is to add to the amenities that Reston already has for after-school programs, rental for community activities and whatnot, would be very helpful.
So what we have in there is helpful?
Absolutely. I think that, I just wanted to make that point and highlight the point that my understanding is that's what it's going to be used for.
Right.
And the community should know at the outset, that's what the intent is, that's what the board is discussing. We're not talking about turning it into a restaurant or otherwise. It's really recreational purpose added to our common areas. In the figures, looks very attractive. You can get a loan, no down payment. That's very, very attractive. I just renegotiated my own mortgage, and I didn't get 3.5%. I got a little bit higher than that. So, you know, it says something about the credit worthiness of RA. But I'm a little bit concerned about the revenue figures and how real they are. So, David, if you could talk a little bit about how you came up with the revenue figures.
And I'm actually going to look at Larry Butler, his department was intimately involved with that.
What we did, I worked with Laura Kowalski, our Deputy Director for Recreation, and we looked at an annual calendar and looked at the possibilities. The foremost assumption is that right now we do programming, we do a lot of programming April through October, and then when the cool weather comes, people scatter and they go to other program providers, with the exception of what we do at Nature House, which is really environmental ed themed, more so than general programming, instruction, classes, to one bead making, you know, whatever. So we looked at a calendar and we basically plotted out a year's worth of programs, and it's not complete saturation. And we also looked at rentals. So as an example, we about 20% of that revenue figure, 25% is rentals. And we think given the location of the property, the fact that it sits on a lake, it's a beautiful setting, and the fact that it's proximate to other park uses, tennis, baseball, basketball, the trails and so forth, that it would be a great rental facility. So quite frankly, I think we've been very conservative on those numbers. And one of the large figures in there from a programming standpoint is after-school programs. There's a high demand for quality after-school programs, and that would be an excellent place to do that. So we, again, kind of plotted out an annual calendar. I think we were conservative intentionally because we didn't want to make projections that were like, oh my gosh, how are you going to meet those numbers? But I think the venue speaks for itself in terms of location and whatnot. So that's how we came up with the number that Dave has in the spreadsheet there.
Okay, thank you.
Want to compliment David. I don't know how you were able to get such a great rate. Maybe you can negotiate for me the next time at my house. But my concern is I guess the negative cash flow in year 2019 and 2020. And I know this is based on assumptions. Some of this, especially what Larry gave us, is based on assumptions. Hopefully, that will go beyond the assumptions that we will not have a negative cash flow in those 2 years. That's my concern.
So we are, we're being fairly conservative in our revenue
that.
projections. But it could very well turn out that this is the impact. And we wanted to be clear with the member base that this is what we could be looking at.
But that's a major concern of mine.
I think, too, when you're looking at those numbers, as David indicated earlier, it makes an assumption that the number of housing units does not change. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody in this room knows that is not going to be the case as you get to those out years. But we can't make assumptions as to when properties come online. You've got the Harrison that will come online that's already included in the numbers. You've got Reston Heights just up the street that will come online probably around that time, 18, 19. Crescent will come online. And there are other, I'm sorry? Fairway at some point in time when that does that. But you've got quite a few units that are getting ready to come online that would mitigate that. We can't include that because they don't exist right now. We just know they're coming, a question of when. We do know that the Reston Heights, they'll start probably building this year. You'll start seeing some construction there. When the units come online is another question. But it should impact these numbers as you go forward. So being very conservative in what we put on paper, we didn't want to make any assumptions. We also, as Larry indicated, we're very conservative in our revenue numbers for programming, for net programming. That, too, could be higher, that we're projecting there and could offset that as well. So this is a requirement that we have in our deed to show 5-year operating expenses. We wanted to make sure we included anticipated revenue. So that's what we've got so far to show. I've heard a couple of times from the board the question about, tell us more about the revenue. So it sounds like we need to put maybe a little bit more information about that with the fact sheet materials so we can say, here's where it came from. So we'll work on that for the next round or next draft that we have.
Not to count chickens that aren't hatched, but it might be helpful to just have a by year. I mean, we do have 2 projects that should have shovels in the ground this year. And to know the number of units, the number of dwelling units and potential revenue associated with those, I don't think that that's, an outrageous thing. I mean, we're,
An informational.
Informational sheet, yeah, just, I mean, part of the overall, I mean, I think it's good for people to have a broad view,
Okay? Yeah, no, that's good.
Jeff?
Great work. Okay, we put the package together. Obviously, there's still more work to do on it and getting some more details so we have a really good understanding. I think one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is that Reston over time is going to be changing. So having discussions like this where we can start to be thinking about future programming needs that we may have and additional assets that the association may want to bring on to meet that change in our neighborhoods 5-10 years from now. I think it's a prudent discussion for us to have in that whole context of Reston's changing. And this is a great 5-year projection, but when we're thinking about large investments like this, we need to be thinking not what it's going to cost us next year, but what are going to be our needs 5-10 years from now. So I think it's important to have this type of discussion about investments to reflect the future of our community and not just what it is today. And also along those same lines, with all the development going on in the Lake Ann area, particularly, the desirability of that site is not going to get less. It's going to become much more coveted by commercial developers. And that's something that we need to be thinking about too as part of the trade-off analysis on this. But I think we're off to a good start, and I'm looking forward to getting more community input on that. But it's an important way for us to move forward, I think.
Lucinda, anything?
I think this is a unique and good opportunity for the Reston Association. It will improve our tree cover, and it's a great move for the environment and recreation. It's going to join 2 parts of open space together. Financially, I'm not sure about the price that we're offering. However, maybe when we see the appraisal, it'll be more apparent why it's so high. My main concern is, I agree with the other members' concern about the revenue, and I would appreciate seeing more detail on what we're currently making on our programming so that we can, see the numbers kind of. My main concern is that the use for the property matches the needs for all of our residents. And I think it's really important to reach out to all of our diverse residents and make sure that this is meeting the needs of everybody. And in order to do that, I was looking, are we going to have a survey? Like, how are we going to collect residents' input on what they'd like to see the property be? I'd like to make sure that we reach out to everybody.
Just as we do with our approved development plan, as we've showcased with the Pony Barn, there are going to be a number of opportunities in public hearings, direct comments to our website. So they can respond to us with questions, comments, issues 24/7. And we'll tabulate all of them and will all be publicly available, certainly available to us and staff and advisory committees as well.
So like the Pony Barn will have a working group?
I would, now that you have a Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, I would
Yeah.
hope that that would be utilized as well as the brand-new policy that the board adopted just a couple of weeks ago on land use development. The board can take a look at all of the uses and come up with, a lot of member input. And I think we've tried to build in a mechanism for that to this, not only through the public hearings to get public comment, but also through the district meetings. This will be an added item as per your request at your last board meeting, that we solicit member input as to what we could use the site for. For this referendum, we felt as staff it was very important to give an idea of uses, because I think members want to know what would be your intent. We had seen some comments out in public that this would be used for staff office space, and I wanted to dispel that as quickly as possible, because that's not how staff envision this space being used. It's community recreation space is how we see it. But I do think it's important, just as you indicated, Lucinda, that we get member input from all of the elements of our community, and I really hope that we get to work with our advisory committee that's been set up to do that. And I think it's already been queued up with that committee. If I remember last week, the subject has come up. So I'm sure we'll get some great input that our Deputy Director of Rec Services can use to build programming if we're lucky enough to acquire the property.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Richard?
Well, I'll echo what Kate said, and for the comments regarding more specificity on the revenue projections, keep in mind that based on what Kate just said, these are suggested uses. Staff is taking a stab at putting revenue projections around what the staff has suggested as uses. The final programming will be dependent, as Kate said, on membership input. So we may have to adjust revenue numbers up or down based on what the community says they want to use the facility for. And in the analysis that Parks and Rec does, and that the board does, we will be looking at not only the actual proposed uses, but what the revenue impacts are of those proposed uses. While we're on the subject of revenue, David, I think we need to, on that first page, under the scheduled annual gross income, we make note that revenue commences 7/1. In fact, revenue commences best case 1/1/2016,
Okay.
right? Okay.
Well, July 1, 2016. So I have,
Yes, I mean,
move the same comment onto the first page. Absolutely.
Okay.
We can do that.
I have asked that. Okay. Mr. Siegel, are you out there? I have asked for, and I believe that you are going to take a look at provisioning for reserves.
Yes.
I'd like to have some discussion as to, because I know that members will raise the question of programming that competes with RCC. So in the course of evaluating what our programming opportunities are, I think we may need to make sure that we are not being duplicative. I also think, David, going back for a second to the revenue projections, I think we have to allow sufficient time. We're not necessarily going to generate revenue out of the gate. There's going to have to be an aggressive marketing program and publicity as to what we have to offer. So we should factor that in terms of when we're going to get revenue. I think the last comment is regarding the projected negative cash flow and the member assessment. I want to remind everyone that even with the negative cash flow, that does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a member impact. That's all part of the budgeting process. So that the negative impact could be absorbed and something and some other program doesn't take place, or whatever the board at the time, how they decide to manage that number. So it could be significantly less, and again, depending on what the revenues are and all the other costs. Plus, there is always the opportunity to offset some of our principal from future infusions of cash from generous developers. That's it.
There was one other section that was left.
Yep.
The last section on here was referendum requirements. As per section 410 of the Reston deed, the Board of Directors wishes to make a single, if the Board of Directors wishes to make a single capital addition, alteration, or improvement to the common area, having an aggregate cost in excess of $369,000 as adjusted pursuant to the Reston deed, then the making of such addition, alteration, or improvement requires a majority vote of the members entitled to vote. As defined in section 34B of the Reston deed, all owners of residential property subject to the Reston deed may cast one vote per lot owned. There are blank residential property owners eligible to vote in the referendum. We're confirming the number on that before we insert it. It's just over 17,000, but we want to make sure we are correct. The quorum requirement for a single referendum, for a successful referendum, is 10% of the eligible votes. Therefore, at least blank, depending on the number of total voters, residential property owners must cast a ballot for the referendum to be valid. And we'll make sure those blank spaces are filled in. Does that information make sense?
But I think we should probably specify that it's a majority of the votes cast. Is that right? We should probably have something about who the winner is, how we determine who the winner is.
End of the first paragraph requires a majority vote.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Lucinda?
Oh, no comment.
Richard?
We may want to show what the adjusted 369 is as of today, just for reference purposes. I mean, we're well above it, but.
Ellen?
Good.
Mike?
I just want to compliment staff for pulling together a very professional package.
Thanks, Mike. Ian?
No, I echo Mike's comments. Good job.
I agree with all of you before, especially Richard with the 369. How often does that get adjusted?
Annually.
Annually? Okay, it's not $1965. Okay. I did have one question or perhaps comment on potential uses of the property. There are a lot of concerns by the residents in that area of the noise coming across the lake, and especially with the restaurant, noises at all time of hours. If we put the word of receptions in, it's a red flag to me that parties will happen, they'll be allowed all night. I don't know if somehow, I know that's not the intent of Reston for this land. I don't know if we can put a time limit or.
Again, this was just suggested, but I think it's a good point. We're hoping that member input, including folks that live in that area, will have the opportunity to comment on that, as well as the rest of the community as well, but it's a very good point.
Okay.
We do have standard restrictions at all of our pavilions already.
Right.
I think if we, following up on what Danielle said, if we somehow can figure in how to say low impact,
Yeah,
that might be, because that's certainly the intent.
yeah, that's a very good point.
And there's something Director Muir had said earlier in the evening that I would just like for everyone else to hear, because she's such a good scientist, is her comments were from an ecological viewpoint. The value for wildlife and recreation goes up exponentially when when you connect the two properties. Just as another reason for us to really want to go after this.
Thank you for bringing it up. She did want to make sure that the community heard that comment. Yeah, I think it's a job well done. Compliments to this. Oh, Eve.
Actually, Kate, sort of environmental positives would be a good thing to add to this. Just
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the, for lack of a better word, the defensive benefits of this transaction should be highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not just doing this because it's an opportunity to have additional programming. We're also doing this because it prevents somebody from doing something ugly.
Yeah, again, I was going to say compliments to the staff, to our attorneys, Kate, for organizing it at this point. It is in draft mode. We know it'll get better and better, especially with community input, as well as input from our committees as well. I think I have to reiterate what the last few comments. This is an opportunity, I think, that you have to look at it from an intangible standpoint. We are protecting a piece of property, and we have been hit hard in the past on that. And just as we've done with regard to our support of Reston National and its defense to remain open space, again, this is something that I think the community needs to understand. This isn't for us to find revenue opportunities. This is an opportunity for us to protect a large swath of green area and make sure, I think as Director Thompson said a few weeks ago, allowing Reston to have total control, the Reston members to have total control over this property is our mission. What happens with it, obviously we want the member to tell us what we should do with it, if so inclined. And I have to say, having been participating in getting some commercial property up in New York with my company presently, the financing that was agreed to down here is earth-shattering. So kudos to the finance department and David to your efforts to work with these lenders. I'm very impressed.
And David, just so you know, has been working with our fiscal committee chair to look at these numbers to make sure, where'd he go? He's sitting back down. To make sure that they made sense. So we wanted to use the great talent that we had there to bounce this off of. We will be taking it to the fiscal committee as well later this month to get their reaction, so if they are recommending any additional adjustments of things that need to be included. We want to put together a thorough package. So I really appreciate it. I know the team, my staff team here really appreciates the comments tonight. The question for us was what's missing. And you've done a really great job in giving us information to add before we put this out again on February the 26th. Or prior to that, we'll be working to get that done before the packet goes out and so that it's up on the website for public comment.
Certainly, anybody wants to make comments, you know how to find us. We'll make sure that that's known. All right, I know that took a little longer than our scheduled agenda. Thank you for everybody's patience, but I think it was a very good discussion. Thank you, folks, with us here this evening. We have one more item in the special meeting, and that is an update on the Reston Master Plan. Is our John still here? Thank goodness you're still here, sir. Thank you. All right. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'll try to move through this quickly because I know you have another agenda after this, but that's not to understate its importance. You know, for the BZA hearing on Reston National, there was over 300, probably over 400 Restonians at the county, which was a great showing for the community and for that cause. We have a comprehensive plan which is setting the vision for the entirety of Reston, the Reston Master Plan, we call it. That's going to be voted upon by the Planning Commission and later the board this year. We've talked about it before. Phase 1 was done. Now they're doing the rest of Reston Master Plan, and Phase 1 is being incorporated into that. So now's the last chance for a while to really make this plan the community's. So we've got one deadline, which is coming up February 12th, and that's a deadline for any members, any board members, any Restonians, any Reston members, RA members, to provide individual comment. You can do it through email on the site the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Zoning. Just go to that site and it'll direct you through to provide comments. Those comments are read and they are considered and they are posted so the rest of the community can see them to elicit more dialogue. And the reason that's a good thing is April 22nd is the Planning Commission hearing date. Again, that is a public hearing where people can submit written comment. You can go and comment orally in person, or you can send emails. So there will be a board hearing after that. So we're not at the end of the process. There's ample opportunity for individual Restonians to make their voices known, and they should do that. What I want to talk about is this board has endorsed certain changes that we've presented to county staff before in December. We'll be presenting that again by the 12th to meet their deadline. We are hopeful that most of those comments will be addressed in the new text that comes out probably in March, toward the middle of March. But there are 4 issues that have come up since then and have had discussions in the community that I needed a little bit of guidance on. And I know your time is short. And the board doesn't have to reach a conclusion or be unanimous on these issues. You don't have to take a position because I think the members might be somewhat divided. The first issue is, should the Tall Oaks Village Center be deleted from the list of village centers and added to a list of convenience centers, which is a smaller commercial area, thereby allowing it to be redeveloped to residential uses and convenience center uses, which again is a mix of office, retail, on a smaller scale. The reason for that is this center has never really performed in the last 10 years as a village center. All your village centers really are going to be stressed by the new development in the corridor because you're going to have a significant amount of first floor retail, personal service, and other uses within the corridor area. Significant square footages, new businesses, new buildings, and that I think is going to put a stress on the older village centers and their commercial tenants. So Tall Oaks really is underperforming now. As a matter of fact, it's just been sold. So the question is, do you keep it designated as a village center, which means you want proposals to be a full village center, or do you let it go to something else? And I think the community is a little bit divided on that. I'm just not convinced that it can remain a convenience center and be economically viable and have enough land area and enough exposure without taking Reston Association's common area, which is the treed area around it, which screens it from Wheelie. So my recommendation would be to take it off the list of village centers and call it a convenience center. Keep some smaller residential area there, which is there now, and allow the majority of that parking lot to be redeveloped for some residential development. Again, the scale of which would be determined by that proposal so it fits in. So that's the first one. We can do a mod seri item if you'd like and have any discussion. And again, you don't have to take a position. I'm just looking for guidance so that we know whether to present a proposal on your behalf or not.
So John is looking for you all to comment as to whether you agree with the statement, yes, you do want to have it change from village center to convenience center when you're talking about Tall Oaks, just so that we know what we want to recommend to the county staff.
Yes.
For the 12th
Yes.
of February.
You want to get a Danielle?
What will the impact be? What will the impact of the Crescent apartments be, Lake Ann?
I mean, Lake Ann isn't for discussion in this group, but the Village Center, I mean, for Tall Oaks, I mean, I think that what's going on over there is just really bad. I mean, it's, property values are not what they should be there because, you know, you come in on the approach and you drive past that, it's essentially an abandoned center. The parking lot is used for all kinds of transactions. It isn't a good situation. I think, I can't imagine that the residents there would want anything more robust than what it was at its strongest, which was a very low-key, you know, I mean, I think a strong convenience center would replicate what it was.
Yes, that's
yeah.
the concept.
Yeah.
It never was a full village center, and now, like Lake Ann, the village centers have to have a little bit more density or intensity and take away parking lots and build something, either retail or mixed use, in order to compete with the
Right,
quarter.
but if you could grab a cup of coffee and get your dry cleaning and get some milk, you know, then that would be great.
And provide elderly housing is another objective.
Right,
in the village.
yeah. I mean, right now, the only thing that's surviving there over there is Mama Walks and Post 75, which is.
Danielle?
Yeah, I lean towards convenience center.
Okay. I think you've got, Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to, I've been over to Tall Oaks often and nothing seems to be happening there. And not really sure, but I'd be interested in knowing what, possible development pathways there might be, either as a village center or a convenience center. My understanding is that the owner has really not been engaged there for a long time.
It's been sold.
And it's just recently been sold.
It's been sold, so something will come forward. The question is,
Yeah. Since it's been sold, there's going to be something happening. So
Something-
it's time for us to make a comment.
Understanding what the development trajectory is as a village center or as a convenience center. I don't know what the.
we're trying to.
We're trying to decide that now.
Yeah. I just can't make.
Okay. All right.
I don't know what those pathways are.
Ellen?
John, we know it's just recently been sold, the property. What do the developers, what do they envision, or what's their projection?
I don't know that, and I'm not sure that they've come out publicly on that, but I would suspect that they're not buying the entirety of it, so portions of it that could be used for the convenience center are excluded. I would assume that they would be looking for a residential project to go in where the parking areas are and some of the retail that's vacant. So I think that vision would fit more of a convenience center, allowing residential.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess based on my limited knowledge, I'd say convenience center, yeah.
Having been at all of the public hearings so far with the county where this was a topic of the entire morning one Saturday, and I see several members of the audience that were there too, putting their dots on up there, as to what they want, what the community wanted to see around Tall Oaks. I would say the majority of the people I saw, where all the dots were that day, focused on convenience center, not a village center. And that came from many, you have to remember, we're not taking this out of the dark. This has been in discussion since the summer with regard to all the county public hearings that hopefully many of us have been part of.
Right.
Jeff?
Yeah, Cal, I kind of observed some of the same things that you did. I was at the session at Aldrin.
Yeah.
And, the flavor that I got was that, folks were recognizing that it's not working in its current capacity and that maybe something more along the line of the convenience center would be the way to go. And that's kind of the way I would lean as well. I think it makes more sense. So, and it was funny. I was driving around. I stopped at Tall Oaks this weekend. I didn't even know we were going to talk about this. But and I was really disappointed with the way it looks, and I said we can do better than this, and perhaps this convenience center designation will allow us to do better.
Yes, as I recall, the the public did want convenience uses there. They didn't want it all to go residential and have no convenience uses.
Balance.
So that- Right.
Lucinda?
I think that this is a good example, this discussion that we're having, of the need for the Reston Association to have experts in planning and urban design and those types of things. I mean, several of the members have said that, we don't have that knowledge to make this decision. I think it's important for us to have that type of knowledge to be a leader in the community. So I don't know if we can ask Mark Fenton, who I guess we've engaged to help with the walkability and multimodal plan, to get his opinion on that. My opinion, with my experience in planning and land use, is that we really need to have a good mix of residential and retail, and pushing and encouraging all of the retail into the corridor does not mix it. We need to have retail in the residential areas as well, especially for the people who live in that neighborhood. Yes, it's blighted right now, but that's because the corporation who owned it didn't do anything with it and did not encourage any use for it. As the value of that land increases, as it will with all of the new development, something prosperous will happen on that property. And it's not for us to decide how to make it the most prosperous. That's for the owner and the developers to decide. What is for us to decide is what our community needs and wants there, and that will come. Once we decide how we want our community to develop, and we give those directions, then that will come as development and everything else comes. It's not the other way around. So for walkability, the residents who live in that area need to be able to walk to convenience centers. They need to be able to walk to grocery shopping. They need to be able to walk to those things. They won't be able to walk to it in the corridor. You need to mix them up. So I very strongly feel that it should stay a village center. We should stick to our principles, and we should demand the uses that we want for our community.
Okay. Richard?
So I'm going to come at it from a slightly different perspective, and that is what's in the best interest of the Reston Association, and that we have to be cognizant of economic viability. In order to make Tall Oaks economically viable as a village center, would put extreme pressure on our other village centers. It would put extreme pressure on our open space and tree canopy, because in order to make that center viable, it essentially requires significant tree removal in order to open up that space and make it more accessible. And what's in the best is, what's best for the Reston Association is to protect what we have. Thus, that guides us toward, okay, if we protect what we have, what is economically viable for the space that's left? I believe, and in discussions with an awful lot of people during the review processes on this whole thing, that convenience center makes more sense. One of my concerns, though, is that whatever is done, I would hope that the developer that redoes that property takes into consideration that Tall Oaks at Reston needs to be brought into that facility, into that land, and made more accessible, that there's something that can be done with those residents, because people tend to forget that Tall Oaks at Reston and the people who live there are members of the Reston Association. So I think we need to consider them as we go forward. So, I mean, if somebody can come up with a great plan, I think we should come up with a great plan, but it should probably be within the convenience center structure.
Did that help at all, John?
Somewhat. Just to respond to Lucinda's comments, I think, believe it or not, I think we're recommending the same thing. We're recommending that convenience, retail, personal service remain there for the surrounding people and be convenient to them. If you look in the comp plan, there is a difference between a convenience center and a village center by definition. The modern village center is more of a South Lakes, more of a Lake Ann, very robust, intense, busy area that has to have great access, great flow. Tall Oaks just doesn't have it with its acreage and with the dead-end road access there. Its proximity to the corridor is what I meant would be a problem for some tenants. But I think the real reason that it's not a village center is it just doesn't have the acreage there. And to make it a village center with the intensity you need, both residential and business is to support a village center, I think would be too dense for that local community around it, especially on that dead-end road. So that, I think that's the difference.
I don't, if you make that a convenience center, then you're allowing them to add much more residential density. So you're not increasing.
Not much more. You can define what you want for that in the plan, certainly through the replanning process that comes through in an application. So I don't think you're necessarily doing that. As a village center designation, you're also allowing potentially higher intense densities of residential. That's all. You know,
I just disagree.
Okay, I understand.
can
I just
agree
wanted
to
to point
disagree.
that out so we were
Folks,
at least talking the same.
I think the consensus was, in general, John, if I were to summarize, because we still have 3 more items, and I do need to remind the board, we still have another agenda tonight of 5, 6, 7 items. So we're doing our best to move along here, but let's try to be concise here. But I think what you heard tonight, consensus, not unanimous, was the designation to convenience center.
Okay. The next one is one we spoke about briefly with the Tetra property, which is should the Lake Newport Convenience Center designation be removed and replaced with the land use designation of existing office development and/or community facility use, which actually would be good guidance if RA bought it under this proposal, or even if RA did not purchase it under this proposal. Right now, it's designated as a convenience center, which allows that mix of uses.
Danielle?
I agree with the land use designation of existing office development and/or community facility use.
Okay. Eve?
As do I.
Mike?
I have no comment.
Okay.
As do I.
No
I agree
comment?
with- No.
Okay.
Eve and Danielle.
I agree with the use of the new language. Jeff?
Yep, I agree with it as well.
Lucinda?
I disagree. I think that we need to have, as I stated in the previous topic, we need to have a mix of, residential, but also convenience center and amenities for people to walk to. That's part of the principles of urban design. And
Just so you know, with the item we're talking about, Lake Newport Convenience Center
I know.
is the
I
Tetra
still think
property.
it should be designated as a convenience center.
Even if it's
Yes,
not what the
I
residents
do.
want?
Yeah.
Have
So
you
you
been?
want to see a
Have you been
restaurant
there?
Yeah, I
there?
have.
It's a parking lot.
I know.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Lucinda. Director Chu?
Convenience center.
Convenience center, you want to keep it as convenience center? Okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
Lake Newport?
Yes.
Would be the Tetra.
Existing
Tetra
office
property.
development or community facility.
Okay.
You prefer the language change then?
I prefer the language change.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Then I think what you see there, sir, is the consensus is to change it to the new language.
Yes, sir.
It's not really a consensus.
The-
It's-
the-
I don't know what it, It's not consensus.
The majority.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next one is, should the Baron Cameron retail area be designated as a new convenience center with language that it should maintain its existing retail intensity and character? Again, that seemed to be where most of the dots were on the meetings that we went to on the weekends.
And define, I mean, that's the Home Depot Center?
The Home Depot Center and everything west going to the edge of Reston
So
there.
the Trader Joe's, the Silver Diamond?
Yes,
The
all of
bank?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, all of that together. That's wonderfully integrated.
Worst set of parking lots.
Which this designation has nothing to do with, has it?
Can you put something that they need to tear out the parking lot and redo it?
Right.
Make it better.
Yes, actually, I think staff has come up with language about that, for that center, which is good. But the other option that's been discussed is, should it be allowed to be redeveloped as a mixed-use extension of Reston Town Center, which again is a more intense use, a lot more redevelopment, and a lot more residential added to it.
And my perspective is I think we want to keep Town Center below Baron Cameron.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mine too.
Yeah. Don't let it bleed up
Don't.
into our area.
Yeah, this is something we can control.
Right.
Right. I would agree with the first sentence. That's my vote, the new convenience center, as long as the parking lot is changed. Doesn't kill
As long
anybody.
as they pave the parking.
Yeah.
Right. There's similar,
Yeah,
there's similar use, yeah.
Eve, anything?
I would agree.
Okay.
The first.
First sentence. Mike, anything?
I'll agree with that.
Okay.
First sentence.
First sentence. I agree, and I think Kate makes a good point. Also, it's enough said, I'll stick with the first sentence. Jeff?
Yep, first sentence, like it.
Listen.
I agree with the first sentence. I was at the meeting where they discussed this, and the majority also.
Yep. Richard?
First sentence.
All right, thank you. I think the majority, if not consensus, is that we stick to the first sentence.
Okay. Fourth one is, the baseline density or intensity for the village centers is their current approved development, as you see it now. No specific guidance is offered by staff regarding redevelopment intensities. They're leaving it open on a case-by-case basis, where a developer would have to come in for a plan amendment like Ann went through. So the question is, should there be a cap or an FAR or a height restriction on that redevelopment for these centers? Some in the community say yes. Some in the community say it should be as it is, the intensity, and just rearrange it into a nicer pattern. Or staff says, we don't need to put a cap on it or any boundaries. Let's just see what proposals we get for plan amendments, like Ann. That one is, I'm not sure there was very much consensus on any of the meetings that I went to. I think there has to be, on some of these centers, as I said, some redevelopment opportunity. Otherwise, they're going to die over time. I would not know how to recommend to you a cap on heights or FARs, but certainly if that principle is a good principle, so that you don't open it up for anything. There is language in the village center text that the staff has put in that would be a benchmark, so you could gauge that, because it's supposed to fit into the surrounding communities and the like, but it's just a little bit more open-ended than some in the community think is appropriate. So I think the appropriate thing to do, from what I've heard, would be to state that there is a concern in Reston that there that the text does not have a cap or does not have height intensities. And perhaps staff should take a hard look at that and try to come up with a little bit stronger language so that when you get a plan amendment coming in for redevelopment, you have a little bit better standard or measure of how it fits, of what fits in and what doesn't. Again, that limits flexibility a little bit, but I think it gives a little more assurance to the surrounding neighborhoods.
John, is that something we could work on with specific folks? Given the guidance you just stated, I would suspect that you would have some ideas on the language, but we could seek additional guidance from members, what have you, in terms of what that guidance might look like.
Yes, and really what we're doing before the 12th is we would highlight that concern.
Yeah, and so we would get
to
specific.
staff, if that truly is.
Let's bring it to their attention now.
If it is a concern of the board as opposed to individuals in the community.
Okay. Danielle, anything?
No, I just think it should be lower than the Washington Monument. I would need more information on
Okay.
this, and I recommend they come back with something. I agree, it shouldn't be completely open-ended. We need to somehow size it.
I think that we should be careful not to limit opportunities for creative solutions, because sometimes you can say, oh, well, it shouldn't be higher than 8 stories or whatever, and but going up sometimes saves huge amounts of tree cover, and going up is better than sprawling out. So I think we should be careful not to hinder creative solutions. And so I kind of would lean towards a case by case, maybe with some guidance. I mean, if it's all, if the DRB has influence and control, then I have a great deal of comfort because I trust that process.
Okay. Mike, anything?
I think that providing some basic guidance would be helpful.
Let's see what staff comes up with.
Yes.
Highlight the issue.
Yeah.
Because again, all of the village centers are very different from each
Right.
other, so you can't come up with one
Exactly.
FAR limit or one height limit.
Yeah.
But I think the issue should be addressed, maybe in a couple sentences to give a little more guidance. At least let staff know that it is a concern of some of the community.
Yeah.
I go back to, I guess, what Eve was saying. One size does not fit all, and I would certainly look to staff for their recommendation.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff?
Yeah, but I think so too. But let's get, I think we need to include language in there that it's an area of concern, but I don't think putting up a firm cap that's going to fit every single situation is the way to go.
Right.
We need to express community concern about the issue.
Okay.
I think that I agree with Eve that we should not limit the potential for the village centers, and we should encourage creative solutions and development. I think that instead of looking at cap on height and FAR restrictions, we should look at open space, like a % requirement of open space as opposed to a cap on height. I think that going up is fine. It's when you've built out to the lot line. And also support for multimodal transportation. So I encourage staff when they're looking at this to look at things to encourage as opposed to restrictions.
Okay, good point. Richard?
Yeah, I think that we would be unwise to restrict creative approaches. And I think that we need to look at this within the context of the proposed plan as a whole. And I think that we need to look at this, remember, as Eve mentioned, this is coveted land. And the DRB's new urban design guidelines are going to play heavily into what might be done. So I think if we have a set of principles the essential elements of Reston, all of those things can help guide the potential developer in terms of what would be appropriate for a given village center. I think I have to keep looking at Lake Ann and saying, that's an excellent example. Took a lot of time, but it's an excellent example of getting everybody into pretty much what, the community thought was in the best interest of Reston. And I think that could be done at any of the village centers. I know certainly for South Lakes that there are a lot of improvements that could be made. None of which could be done in like kind as to what's there now. So.
All right. I think, John, I think you get the word on that. I don't think that we're in a place to put caps on FARs or heights, but certainly any thoughts around additional guidance to let them know that we're going to push our principles that we have already captured in the text in a lot of areas.
Right.
Including multimodal transportation, what have you. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think the idea about couching it in a positive way rather than a restrictive way is a great one. And just so you know, I think that the text has improved the greatest in the area of multimodal transportation encouragement. So, read it. I think we're almost there on at least that part of the text. Thank you.
Kate, anything you want to add to this?
So in your Dropbox is the latest copy of the plan text, as well as these 4 questions that John posed, and a map of the Reston area and the different designations. So you've got that for tonight's meeting, just in case you want to look at it on your own. I think you do have a motion that needs to be put on the table to authorize us to work with legal counsel to get the letter written under your signature and out the door prior to the 12th of February. Since today is the 9th, time is ticking.
All right, I'll give a stab at a motion then. Unless we have one written, I don't think we do. So.
I think you do.
And it is, hang on a second, I'll find it. I do have it.
Is the letter in the Dropbox folder?
The letter has not been created. The letter will be created, Lucinda, based on the statements that we reviewed with counsel tonight.
Yeah, so that's worth coming.
And as soon as it's done, I will make sure that everybody here has got a copy of it.
All right, I found the item. Thank
Which
you.
folder in the Dropbox is it?
It should be in the board meeting packet, February 9 folder. You'll see John's questions as well as the comprehensive plan text, which is many pages, as well as a copy of the map.
It's in the Reston Master Plan. It's in February 9th, but also Reston
As
Master
a
Plan.
Reston Master Plan folder itself.
Okay.
With the sideways map.
So if I may, if I have everybody's attention, now that we have an update, thank you, John. I move to direct staff to prepare a letter to be signed by Ken Knieven as president of the Reston Association to be sent to the appropriate Fairfax County officials, staff, and agencies incorporating and recommending the points and proposed amendments to the working draft comprehensive plan text version published on September 5th, 2014 of the draft phase 2 comprehensive plan text for Reston as prepared by legal counsel. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any questions to that motion items? Then I'll ask the question. All those in favor of the motion as read, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Is anybody opposed?
I oppose.
Anybody abstaining? All right. Did you guys get that? Great. John, thank you so much for spending the evening with us on that.
Thank you.
All right. Last item for the special meeting before we go into our board planning committee meeting is I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, not everybody on the board has to remain for the BPC, but those that are on the BPC